Mm-hmm.
when someone gets a transformed heart.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some people, maybe on both sides of the fence, that just don't understand that God talks. Does that make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah. I think the word we would use in Greek would be metanoia, right?
Okay.
So that'd be a transformation of the mind,
Hmm.
and that's what Jesus says when he's, we translate it into English commonly as repent, but it's a transformation of the mind there. Um,
Hmm.
so that certainly is a part of the message right from the very beginning. So yeah, and some of us have the privilege of having grown up in the bosom of the church and not really having like a big metanoia moment, where
Hmm.
we feel like
Right.
we've just been here all the time, that we're just
Right.
kind of a part of the furniture here. So
Right.
it can be a little bit difficult to relate to where
To
people
someone
can
like
be
me.
and where they end up.
And that's actually why I wanted to talk to you, because I want to talk to someone who's not charismatic.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not,
yeah, yeah.
because that way I'm not looking in my own echo. Man, I want to be careful because I don't want to. I'm
Yeah, yeah,
working
it's
something out.
triangulation. It's triangulation, right? So
Okay. Okay. I
if
like
like
that.
you can, if I can look at something that, let's say there's a Catholic group that I'm not terribly connected with, but they're also kind of like on the same path.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
well, obviously,
Okay.
there's something going on there because we're all these different. You wouldn't assume to
Y-
be related groups are all converging at the same point,
Right.
as Flannery O'Connor, one of her short story collections is "Everything That Rises Must Converge." Uh,
Huh.
yeah, yeah.
Really? Later? Okay.
Everything
That's,
that
I
rises
uh,
have
must converge.
I have to say though, Father Eric is actually very charismatic.
really?
It depends on
I
how you're
didn't know that.
using that word, Jacob.
The word charismatic usually means somebody who has charisma, meaning somebody who's has a how do we put it, leadership personality.
No, no,
Yeah,
Jacob, I'm talking happy, clappy, roll on the ground.
that was my joke. I would be very surprised to see Father Eric speaking in tongues.
Yeah, I mean the problem is that I read my professor wrote this three-part. One of my professors in seminary wrote like a three-part scholarly historical account of speaking in tongues, and it's pretty devastating, I think. But it's also a really long read, and they wrote it in the strangest way possible because they wrote it backwards historically. So they like start at the Catholic Charismatic Renewal in the 1970s and start working backwards. And
Did
part
they?
three hasn't been published yet, which is the patristic and biblical times. So
So wait,
um,
is it thumbs up, thumbs down? What do you have to
so
say?
specifically, the argument that they make, and I think they make a pretty good argument, is that when you look at the Greek of the New Testament, the word glossa, which is translated as tongues, always
Yeah.
meant human languages, right? So something that could be
Right.
understood. So the gift of tongues would be um, like what happened at Acts, right at the very
Right.
beginning on the day of Pentecost. Um, it was believed that St. Francis Xavier had the gift of tongues, considering his extensive missionary works and his abilities to converse with the local people and to
Oh,
evangelize them. Um, so that sort
I
of
got
thing.
you.
And if I remember correctly, there was a 19th century biblical scholar, like a German biblical scholar, very critical, liberal, anti mythologizing type. Um, that came up with the tongues of angels interpretation as a way to demystify it and make
Hmm.
it less miraculous and more rational. And then after the early 20th century, the San Francisco people, can't remember the name of the church, when they went over to India and couldn't speak the local languages, they
Oh, Azusa?
Azusa Street Recycle, yeah. So so that was their argument, and if you want, you could just look up Philip Blosser,
So, hey,
BLOSSE, and
I've got a
Sullivan.
call.
All right, Ron is pretty far behind, and that's quite tragic.
Yeah, it looks like we're losing Ron.
Losing Ron, and I'm just going to take him out briefly. If he seems to have caught up, then we'll put him back on. But that's yeah, and just so you know, Jacob, it is just the Diocese of Fargo, our provincial diocese, the province, the archdiocese in the province is St. Paul, Minneapolis. So
I really don't know what. I mean, I guess an archdiocese is bigger than a diocese.
yeah, so a province is just a collection of dioceses, and the head of the province is an archdiocese. But they just have like ceremonial roles and a few prerogatives. They don't give orders to the other bishops.
Oh, okay. So then I totally misunderstood. I thought the archbishop was the hierarch over the bishops, but I guess not.
They have certain prerogatives and certain rights. So, like if they wanted to call a provincial council, the archbishop would have the prerogative to call that. And they have certain responsibilities. Yeah, but it's not a direct. You can't tell them how to do things.
So is it like a primus inter pares situation?
Yeah.
Okay. I've learned so much about Catholic hierarchy.
Yeah, I think it's fun. I've learned so much too, but that's because I'm in Cameron Law School. So more than I ever wanted to know.
And to answer Paul Vanderklay's question on my channel, so the Antiochians have what they call Western rites, and I was very surprised to see our local priest here in Los Angeles wearing what looked like a cardinal's cassock. It was trimmed in red. So, yeah.
Huh. Well, how about that? They're allowed to do what they want. They're just Orthodox.
Yeah, it was trimmed in red. It wasn't all red. But,
yeah. Okay.
Turns out the hierarchy isn't this stark, sort of rigid, unchanging thing. By the way, Roland, long time no see. Hope you are well, my friend.
Hey, Mark. Yeah, doing well, thanks.
Good.
If we can go back to hi Mark. Going back to Achadia.
Yeah.
It was very interesting because, like I said, usually we talk about the distinction between Yush and Simcha, right? Which is I think so. You were translating. I mean, you said despair, or sloth?
So Achadia is commonly translated in English as sloth, and I don't think that's as broad of a translation as we should get. So just kind of leaving the Greek untranslated. I guess it could also be Acadia, and I'm just not going to worry about it today. So it's sorrow at spiritual goods, right? So you see some higher purpose towards which you can strive. You also see that it's going to be difficult, and that causes pain, aversion, sorrow. And you don't want to do that. And it's only a capital sin when you give in to that and go after lower things. But when you stick with it, then the temptation actually makes you holier. So that's good.
Yeah. Jonathan Pajot says it's the sin of acedia, and he said it was the sin of attention, or more like obviously he had a video on this. It's probably 4 years old now, but he said like misaligned attention. Like,
well, that's one of the daughters. That's one of the daughters of just I'm just going to keep on saying Achadia because that would be the way you'd pronounce it in Latin, and Latin is the superior language.
Thank you, Trump.
One of the daughters of Achadia, which is the sins that can flow from a capital sin, is wandering after forbidden things. So that's one of the ways that it can go, but it could also. So, like some of the ones that Thomas Aquinas mentions, Schism from St. Gregory the Great, are like spite, where you just kind of, being mean to people who are going after good things, or faint-heartedness in doing your vow, or sluggishness about commandments and doing the right thing. So, yeah. I'm going to answer Ron's question here real quick. Can you explain the word jubilation used by the fathers like Augustine? No, I cannot. I do not know how he uses it. I may someday have the time to look that up. So,
okay. So first of all, let me say to the people who are watching on my channel, I just put a link to Father Eric's channel, and you guys should go to Father Eric's channel, like and subscribe, because that's how it works. First. Second, so yeah, I mean, I was listening to you as I was walking, and I was thinking, and so we usually talk. So usually people talk about hopelessness or despair, and we talk about that includes you, Sam. Of all the people who should know to be subscribed to Father Eric's channel, it should be you, Sam. But usually we talk about simcha as joy, but when you mentioned the monks in their cells, it reminded me that we actually distinguish between simcha as joy with other forms of happiness, because it really has more to do with contentment, right? So it's a joy in what exists already, as opposed to the type of joy you might.
So have. I think we're so the idea I think behind the counsel for the monk to remain in his cell is that this sorrow is going to pass, and when you get to the other end of it, you'll find the joy there. And so hence it is proper to each virtue to rejoice at its own spiritual good, which consists in its own act, while it belongs especially to charity to have that spiritual joy whereby one rejoices in the divine good. So ultimately what Achadia is getting away, what draws you away from, is rejoicing in the Lord. But if you're able to pass through the temptation, remain in your cell, or however it works out in your life, remain committed to this good purpose that you set out on, then you will find joy at the other end of it. So I don't know if that's answering your question there. Yeah, but there is that connection. I just had to go up a couple articles to find that bit I just read. So.
Seems like they're very it seems like there is a connection there that I just found interesting.
Yeah, and all of this our commentary that we get from Thomas Aquinas, he got from St. Gregory the Great's commentary on the Book of Job, his moral commentary on the Book of Job. So it's it's just fun. All these things. That's a major source.
Aquinas was a priest. No one ever mentions that. It's interesting.
On the point of Eric, you were talking about using your phone, being consumed, I guess, in some ways with the attention of that. And an observation perhaps for myself and watching my kids and watching people around me. is that a big chunk of it is I have a little bit of space, and in that space, what am I going to fill it with, right? Because we live in a world where all of the space gets filled up, and space feels uncomfortable. And I guess you're pointing to this aspect of kind of the difficulty of the spiritual path, right? We would perhaps look at the lives of monks and ascetics and sort of think, why would people deliberately take on a bunch of suffering and difficulty when the world that we live in is, how do we make things easy? How do we solve immediate problems without worrying about future problems? Future problems, that's a problem for future Homer. You know, he can deal with that later, right? But that's the reality of the world we're living in, the instantaneous, the immediate. And so some of this is a mapping of the path of difficulty and suffering, and having young boys in particular, there's some aspect of like, well, they need some demands of that. And if they can see money, or I'm going to be attracted to the girls, I'm going to have a big body because I'm going to get buff and those kinds of things, well, you know, maybe they'd be prepared to spend a couple hours a day working out or doing something else. But the spiritual disciplines, there doesn't seem to be any real benefit. Like, what am I getting out of this, right? Mm-hmm. And I think some of that is kind of a loss from the culture of, why would I do this? It's like, well, because of who you're becoming. And it's like, well, why does that matter, right? Why does it matter who I am? Doesn't it matter, you know, what I've got and, you know, my money and my body and my health and those kinds of things? And so in some ways, the aspects of character and the aspects of the spiritual journey are somewhat transparent, I guess, to many. Yeah. And so it becomes hard to engage with that because, like, why am I doing it, right? The why.
The telos. Make Final Cause great again. Roland, were you listening to my stream on maturity? Because not only did I mention future Homer, but I pretty much outlined all that. And I think that's a lot of materialism and individualism that causes what you're talking about. But the biggest single problem is we've invented this bizarre term called education. Wow. I know what people are describing when they're describing it, but that's not education. I suspect that it's just a bad word, and what people are talking about is formation. And around about the 1960s, maybe a little earlier, partly because of psychology, which is absolutely corrosive to the universe, people started treating their children as adults and trying to give them freedoms to do things like pick their own names and, you know, which ended, hopefully, with pick your own gender. Although we're having a problem getting rid of that one. But you can see a clear path of the pick your own individualism.
I felt pretty happy when I was allowed to pick the purple popsicle, you know, because that was my favorite color.
Right. But when you don't form people with a telos or a final cause, Father, where's the banner? Come on, we've got a banner for this. When you don't form people using the final cause, then it's a good point. The why can't, technically speaking, you cannot use logic, reason, and rationality to answer the why. The why has to be answered by a final cause. There's no other way for it. Just like efficiency doesn't mean anything by itself. It needs to have a goal first, and then efficiency can have a meaning.
And that's why I think the line, one of the few lines, so Pope Benedict had some real bangers while he was alive. May he rest in peace. And his encyclical Deus Caritas Est, God is Love, began with a great line that Christianity isn't an ideal or an ethical system, but it is an encounter with a person, the living encounter with the living person of Jesus Christ there. And so that's why you'll, if you're with Christian missionary groups and that sort of thing, it's all about trying to like make that connection between the Lord and the people that they're dealing with, because, when you actually have that, and like you have that, that metanoia, that transformation of the mind that comes from meeting him, then like all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why I have to do all these things. That's the final cause showing up right there at the beginning, first in order of intention, last in the order of execution. So yes, Final Cause will be great, made great in the end, because it's the first in order of intention and the last in the order of execution. So in the end, it'll be complete.
I have to go, and I could leave the stream going on my channel, but I'm not going to, because people should come to Father Eric's channel and like and subscribe rather than watching on my channel. So I'm taking it off my channel.
You're the best free advertising I could ask for, Jacob.